And what I'll do is, in my few minutes of comments, I'll try to focus on results, which I think are the ultimate test. You know, when you're a CEO of a major corporation, you get graded every 3 months. You put your quarterly results out, and they're either good or bad, and the market response is nearly instantaneous. In fact, it's pre-instantaneous because there are whisper numbers before you put them out, and the stock moves on the whisper numbers, and then if you don't make the whisper numbers, which may not even be your forecast, you get hammered. So results are super, super important. And I think, analysis, they're very, very important in the area of education and the education of our young people. So why am I interested in this topic? I have a couple of roles. I'm now chairman of Intel, so I don't worry about the day-to-day stuff. The CEO worries about the quarterly results. I worry about some of the bigger, longer-term issues. One of the biggest long-term issues we have is where our business is going to be in the future. To give you an idea, we're about a $40 billion a year company. We do about 80% of our business outside of the United States today, and that's growing. So we're something of an international company. And the international marketplace is important to us, and therefore international competitors are very important to us because we have no protected marketplace in the United States per se. U.S. is a very open free trade situation, so we compete with the best from around the world, and therefore we need the best employees. Part of my job is traveling around the world, and I visit about 30 different countries each year. Most of them are emerging economy countries, trying to develop the marketplace, talk to government leaders, business leaders, educators, and see what they think is important, what's going on. And you get a common message from just about everyone you talk to around the world today. And that message is very much, we want to improve our standard of living, we want to improve our per capita income in our country. The way to do that is to grow our local businesses, to participate in the export marketplace. When they say export marketplace, that's a code word for selling to the United States or the United States and Western Europe, two of the really two big marketplaces in the world. And they all say the same thing. To do that, we need a very well-educated workforce. They have concluded, rightly so, that what we have known for some time, which is there's a direct correlation between standard of living, per capita income, and the quality of your workforce, education quality of your workforce. So if you accept that, and then you look at the results or the trends, you can get kind of disturbed. You get disturbed because if you look at how well U.S. kids are doing compared to their international peers, and I don't really care what measure you look at. You can look at TIMSS, you can look at NAEP, you can look at PISA, you can look at any of these indicators. And even more recently, you can start to look at the percentage of the workforce that has a post-K through 12 degree, AA degree or university degree of any sort. We used to be number one in the world. Amongst the OECD countries, we are now 10th. And we're 10th not so much because we are declining, we're flat to somewhat down in that indicator, but everyone else is going up while we are flat to somewhat down. So it's kind of a negative result, and you have to ask yourself why and what can we do to change that, which is kind of the founding point for Achieve and its effort working with states and the NGA, et cetera. I do want to just tell you a side story for a minute about one of these tests. The 2006 PISA tests were released at the end of '07, December of last year. On that day, I happened to be in Brasilia, meeting with the President of Brazil and 6 of his cabinet members. And the number one topic of discussion with President Lula that day, from his perspective, was in fact, Craig, what do you think about the subprime mortgage mess in the United States and how bad is it going to get? And I kind of shrugged my shoulders and I said, geez, I don't know. It's going to be a temporary thing. It might last a year or two. Even if it's bad, it'll blow over. Then I said, Mr. President, I really don't think that's your biggest worry. I think your biggest worry are the PISA results that just came out yesterday, where Brazil ranked something like 55th or 57th out of the 59 countries that were surveyed. So happened we had the education minister in the room, and as soon as I mentioned PISA and the results, he started drawing figure eights with his toe and looking under the table. And President Lula said, "PISA, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's merely the international test that compares the future Brazilian workforce to the world. And you rank at the bottom. I think that's your main worry, Mr. President." And he says, "You're probably right." So I said, that was interesting. The president of Brazil didn't know what PISA was. So I walked out of the room and back to my hotel, and I emailed my friends in the United States. And I said, "Hey, I'm in Brazil and got these PISA results, and I'm wondering what the reaction is in the United States." And there was a long silence because there was no reaction in the United States. There was one newspaper article in a mid-sized newspaper, and that was it. And this was in response to the U.S. ranking 21st, 24th in math and English out of 30 top OECD countries, so kind of in the bottom third. And I thought, maybe Brazil is not unique in their ignorance of this. That was accentuated by a discussion I had this summer. There's a conference in Sun Valley each summer run by Herb Allen, and it's a media conference. And we had Joel Klein there last year, and he was interviewing Michelle Rhee, who's the chancellor of the DC School District. Talked about some high school work in Chicago and in New York City. In the question and answer session afterwards, I stood up and I said, "Joel, I think one of the problems is that the U.S. responds to media issues on our topic. Whatever is hot in the media gets political response, and if it's not hot in the media, it gets no political response. We make precious little progress." And for example, when PISA came out, there wasn't a single article written on it. And Joel said, "Yeah, you're right, Craig. There's not enough focus on this." So I sat down, and afterwards, three very well-known columnists, TV commentators came up to me and basically said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "The PISA results." And they said, "What's a Leaning Tower in Italy got to do with education?" And I said, "I rest my case." But I think if you look in detail at what the U.S. is competing with going forward, and I forewarned Mike and my Intel advisors I'd be politically incorrect today, what we're talking about in the United States is the middle class. And you hear a little bit of discussion in the presidential debate about the middle class, and isn't it terrible that the middle class has a stagnant income or even a declining purchasing power going forward? And what everyone really is using code words to say is the real problem is that our middle class, to be a middle class going forward, has to add enough value in what they do to be competitive around the world. To do so, they need an education which is competitive around the world. If we don't have an educated middle class, we will not have a middle class. And the basic problem here is we need an educated middle class. And every indicator we have is pointing in the wrong direction. The PISA results, the NAEP results, the TIMSS results, the percentage of our middle class with a college degree, every one of those is pointing in the wrong direction. And why in the world our presidential candidates are not willing to address this front on, as opposed to saying, yes, we're going to bring automotive jobs back to Detroit, which is not the problem. That's a symptom of the problem. The problem is we need an educated middle class. To have an educated middle class, we need solid K through 12 education, and then we need a good university education. And so it's kind of fun to look at those two. The United States is a dichotomy. The United States is perceived to have the best top-tier university system in the world. If you look at the top 50, top 100 universities, the U.S. dominates the ranking. If you look at our K-12 results, we dominate the rankings at the other end. Now, how in the world can this be? How can you have a sub-average K-12 system and an above-average university system? If you look at the characteristics of the two systems, they are totally different. You know the differences, I won't dwell on them. Let's just say that our university system focuses on competition. It focuses on international competition. There's competition for students, there's competition for faculty, there's competition for research graduates. They worry about their international ranking. That's their lifeblood. We haven't gotten there yet on K through 12. Many of the things that Mike Cohen talked to you about that you're participating in are getting us there, and I applaud you for moving in those directions. But we are moving very slowly in that direction, something which is critically important to us. Let me jump a little bit to why is Intel interested in this? If I'm a representative from Intel, why are we interested? We've got 55,000 employees in the United States. Entry-level employee to the U.S. used to have high school or equivalent degree. You can't get in the front door of our company now without an AA degree if you want to work on the manufacturing floor. And increasingly, if you want a job off of the manufacturing floor, you need a master's or PhD or an MBA, something equivalent. So education is, in fact, truly important to us. If we can't hire those workers in the United States with those skills, we go to Russia, we go to China, we go to India, we go to Malaysia, we go to Poland, we go to Ireland, we go someplace where we can hire them. It's very simple. We export the job. We have to do that to be internationally competitive. We are not unique. We are probably the poster child of manufacturing jobs for the future of the United States, where there's a lot of value add associated with it, and we pay good wages. Associated with that value add has to be a good education. And the education has to be ongoing, obviously. The statistic I like to quote to people is how rapid the turnover of our products are. You all have heard of Moore's Law, which says you double things every 18 or 24 months. Memory density, processing power, number of transistors in integrated circuit. In reality, our company is ruled by something which is a little bit more dramatic than Moore's Law. If you go between January and December of any given year, and you look at the revenue that you get in December, where that revenue comes from in terms of products, you find that about 90% of the December revenue comes from products that weren't there in January of that year. It says 90% of your business each year is from new products introduced that year. You can't do that without a highly educated, innovative workforce. Those are the people we hire. Those are the people we have to hire if we're going to stay in business. And I would contend that is the future of the United States. If, in fact, you want a middle class, it will be people who are educated in that style, in that capability, with those qualities. Okay, so where are we? Where are we going? Every time I come to a difficult problem, I have a simple solution. I go to Chef Chu's, which is my favorite Chinese restaurant, Silicon Valley. I have a Chinese dinner because I know I will get the answer by the end of the dinner. So I want to use 3 fortune cookies to tell you where we are, where we're going. The first fortune cookie we've been talking about. This is real life fortune cookie 7 or 8 years ago when I first really got interested in the competitiveness, U.S. competitiveness topic. It's about the time my first grandchild was starting high school in the U.S. The fortune cookie said, very simply, the world will always recognize talent regardless of where it is. That's very simple. It says talent is the characteristic which will determine success. And if you've got talent, it doesn't make any difference where you are. You can be in China, in India, Malaysia, Russia, South America, anywhere, Brazil. If you've got talent, the world will recognize it. And that's exactly what we're seeing around us on a daily basis, which is the talent equates to competitiveness. So if the world recognizes talent, then golly, we in the United States better recognize talent, and we better recognize it on the basis of results, capability. And that's why I think some of the things that Mike was talking about earlier are so important. You know, we can compare school districts in Arizona, the state in which I live. We can compare schools in Arizona, school districts in Arizona. We can compare Arizona to California, New Mexico, and Nevada, but none of that makes any sense anymore. Mike showed you all those beautiful maps of states in the U.S. comparing themselves to one another. Doesn't make any sense anymore. You know, if the best performing state on the NAEP results shows that our kids, 40% of them or so, are proficient or better in a subject, whether it's math or science, English. That means 60% are not proficient. That should tell us something. The last day or two, I saw Michelle Rhee here in D.C. being interviewed saying, I believe that 8% of the Washington, D.C. students in reading test proficient on NAEP. We have a long way to go. And I don't care whether you use NAEP, PISA, TIMSS, I don't care what you use, but what we have to do going forward is recognize it is not a state-to-state comparison, this is an international comparison. The world will recognize talent wherever it resides. That's where the jobs will go, is where the talent is. That's where the educated people will succeed. Okay, second fortune cookie. You can't win unless you choose to compete. We just finished the Olympics. The Olympics are a great example of dedication, international competition, and you get the measure of your success. You know, and you find out whether you have the best two-woman beach volleyball team in the world. We do. The men didn't do so bad either in that sport. But that is, in fact, choosing to compete. That is choosing to compare yourself with the best in the world. And that is exactly what we need to do, and that's exactly why the whole issue of common core, common standards, common approach, and international benchmarking is so important to our future. We are well beyond intrastate comparison, interstate comparison. We are internationally comparing ourselves, we have to, with the rest of the world. There's no question. If we don't, I can guarantee you where the next generation of jobs will go. And we are already seeing that to a large extent in the field that I represent, high-tech field. We have almost ceded the engineering profession to foreign countries. If you go to any Tier 1 engineering school in the United States and look at the master's degrees and PhDs granted, over 50% of them are given to foreign nationals. And that number, that percentage increases every year. And oh, by the way, we are not unique in this. If you follow the New York Times, the last couple of months, they've had a big article, a series of articles on Japan, exactly the same thing. Germany as a holding card for Western Europe, exactly the same thing. The established economies are not doing a good job in terms of K through 12 math and science education, getting young people interested in these topics, which is a shame because from my perspective, the driving force for economies in the future are going to be precisely those topics which we are ceding to other countries. And then let's really put this in perspective. The crown jewel of the United States happens to be our universities today. You cannot go to a major university in China or most of the emerging economies of the world and not find what? Relationships and deals cut with 6, 8, or 10 of the major U.S. universities who are transferring curriculum, professors, teaching methods, and policies and procedures and methods to be top tier in the world. So at the same time, we are not doing the best job in the world educating our young people to pursue these topics. Our universities are teaching the rest of the world exactly how to be in the top 10, top 50, top 100 major research universities around the world. So competition is coming, and if we want to win, by win I mean to maintain our standard of living, maintain the lifestyle to which we're accustomed, we have to decide to compete. And I think that's still an if. We have to decide to compete. Okay, third fortune cookie. This is actually not a fortune cookie. But, you know, sometimes when you go to a hotel and you walk in late at night, there's a little thing on your pillow, which is the thought for the day. So this was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. A few months ago, I was there for the World Conference of Information Technology. I walked back in my room after giving a keynote, and there on my pillow was the message for the day. A small deed done is better than a great deed planned. I immediately thought of Mike Cohen and Achieve. Not your daughter, but you, Mike. What is it that we're doing? What is it that we're reviewing in this room today compared to what has happened in the past? In the past, you go back to, I think it was 1992, and the National Governors Association met, and the governors all sat there and said, in the next 10 years, by 2002, we will be #1 in math and science education in the world. It was a great deed planned. And what happened? Absolutely nothing. We decreased by every metric that you can measure. What have we been doing since then, in the last 5 years or so with Achieve? What are all those maps of the U.S., different colored that Mike showed you earlier? Those are small deeds being done at the local level to change the system. That's the way we make progress. We're not going to make progress by assuming that the Department of Education or the next, here in Washington, or the next President of the United States will craft the solution. The solution will become from us, from you, small deeds done at the local level, aligning requirements, raising standards, getting better teachers. Those are the small deeds that make the difference. There is no silver bullet. You all know that. If there was, it would have been fired a long time ago. There's no simple answer. If there was, someone would have given that simple answer. You're going to have Michael Barber talk to you tomorrow. I don't know if Michael's here now, but he's studied the international scene, both for Tony Blair when he was a counselor for Blair in Europe or in England, but also since then working for McKinsey. He states in his work the obvious about education. You know, if you want a good education system, there are 3 requirements that you have to have. And they are so simple, but so difficult. The 3 things you need, Mike will tell you about this. You need good teachers, No system anywhere in the world works without good qualified teachers. You need high expectations, international expectations, not local expectations. No system in the world is successful. They just compare themselves inwardly. And you need to set up the administrative system such that good teachers can do their thing in the classroom and get good results with kids and not leave some of the kids behind. There are examples of this around the world today. I'm leaving this meeting as soon as I'm done talking. I'm getting on an airplane flying to Helsinki. My wife happens to be your ambassador to Finland until January 20th. Finland, I think undeniably, is rated as the top K-12 education system in the U.S. What do the Finns do? They take the top 10 or 20% of their university graduates, become teachers. Teachers are relatively well respected, not overly paid, but well respected in society. Teachers are given freedom to accomplish the task in the classroom, but they're measured and they have high standards. There's no secret there. It's absolutely dead simple. Why can't we do it? There's no secret. We're going there step by step. I hope you find that Mike and his team at Achieve are helping to lead us there step by step, small deed by small deed. I think that's the only way we will get there. But I can't overemphasize the importance of this for this country and for the next generation. Folks, if we don't do it now, you're not going to like what the U.S. looks like in 20 years. It's going to be an absolutely bipolar society. You're going to have a small group of educated, wealthy people and a large number of people who are wondering why their grandparents and parents had a much higher standard of living than they do. It's not a white thing, a black thing, or Hispanic thing. We need to get every kid capable and every kid able to participate in the 21st century economy. So, let me applaud you again for what you're doing, but let me kind of add a sense of urgency. If you travel around the world, if you've got a lot of visas in your passport, you see what the rest of the world is doing. And we are on idle compared to the rest of the world. We're not stepping on the gas pedal. We need to push harder.